Okay, I'm on page 131. We're looking in this chapter at another ut plus subjunctive, or ne plus subjunctive. Should be as easy as the last chapter. In this case, it's indirect command. Now, before we start, let's look at some examples of direct command, which you learned probably way back in Latin 1. Here are 3 examples at the top of the page. In English, return home, help me, don't play. Now, you'll remember, I'm sure, that to express that in Latin, you use the imperative. So the Latin is domum redi, me adiua, nolite ludere. And, of course, you'll recall that the negative for direct commands uses noli plus the infinitive. Those are called direct commands because they give the phraseology, the exact wording of the command directly. We could put quotation marks around them. Commands, however, can also be expressed indirectly. That is to say, without giving the exact phraseology, without using quotation marks. For example, the 3 commands that we started with, return home, help me, don't play, could be expressed indirectly. For example, the father orders the boys to return home. The old man asks the boy to help him. The master forbade the boys to play. Notice in each of these we're getting the sense of the command. The command is being reported to us indirectly. We are not given the exact wording of the command. Hence, they're called indirect. Notice in English, we use the infinitive to express indirect command. Once again, the father orders the boy to return home. The old man asked the boy to help him. The master forbade the boys to play. This, in general, is not what Latin does. But before we speak about the normal way that Latin does this, let's get the exception out of the way, or exceptions. The exceptions are the commanding verbs iubeo and veto. Those take an infinitive, just like English does. Now, rather than looking at examples of that, I propose that we skip that for a moment. Keep it in your mind that those verbs, iubeo and veto, don't follow what we're about to talk about, this ut plus subjunctive usage, but rather uses an infinitive just like English. When you see them in action later in this chapter, you'll see that it's not a problem at all. So instead, let's turn our attention to the normal way that Latin expresses indirect command. That is to say, with all other verbs of commanding, exhortation, etc. We have 3 examples next to our English sentences at the top. The first sentence, the father orders the boy to return home. In Latin, is pater puero imperat, ut domum redere. Now, before we get to the if clause, notice that puero is in the dative, pater puero imperat. Why is it dative? You may recall that many verbs of commanding in Latin take the dative case. For now, just accept the fact that many verbs of commanding take a dative, where we might expect an accusative because we're used to it being a regular transitive verb in English. So once again, the father commands the boy. Now, to the if clause, ut domum redea. First off, very easy to recognize as ut plus a subjunctive, yes? Ut plus a subjunctive. The issue here is how to translate it. You'll remember I said there is no formulaic translation for Latin subjunctives. Rather, it depends completely on the context. Therefore, you have to ask yourself before you translate the subjunctive, what kind of construction do I have? Well, golly, this is really easy to recognize. You have a commanding verb, such as imperare, followed by orne, plus the subjunctive. It is indirect command. Again, we just said a moment ago, how is that expressed in English? As an infinitive. To return home, to help him, to play. So when you render it into Latin, go directly to that good natural English phraseology. Unlike what we did with the subjunctives in the last chapter, where we tried to render it into good English and also follow the Latin closely, I'm going to abandon that latter part. I'm going to ask you rather to abandon that latter part and go directly to good English every single time. That is, you should recognize the construction as indirect command and translate it as to. So in our sentence we have the father orders the boy to return home. Really very, very simple. Likewise, the next two sentences will be pretty easy. Senex puero nogat utse iubeo. The old man asks the boy. Now, what do we have? Indirect command. Go right to natural English. To help him. The old man asks the boy to help him. Very easy. And lastly, magister pueris imperavit. There's that strangish dative again. We'll translate imperavit like a regular transitive verb, as if it were accusative in Latin. We can talk about that in class if you'd like. So we'll have something like, the teacher commands the boys to not play in school or not to play in school. Perhaps even more natural English is what the textbook suggests. The teacher forbids the boys to play in school. That's just about it. The only thing left to talk about is the so-called sequence of tenses. That is to say, which tense of the subjunctive is used after which leading verb. For now, it's going to be quite easy as the first chapter that we dealt with the subjunctive in. That is to say, after any kind of present tense verb, you will get a present subjunctive. After any kind of past tense verb, and I'm using past tense here deliberately, any kind of past tense verb, you get an imperfect subjunctive. Later, when we get other kinds of subjunctive clauses, including other kinds of good clauses, this is going to be become a little bit more involved. But for now, it's really that simple. Any kind of present tense leading verb, commanding verb, is followed by a present subjunctive. Any kind of past tense leading verb, in other words, like imperare, is followed by an imperfect subjunctive. A quick caveat, though, is that we should talk a little bit more in detail about what constitutes a present tense leading verb and what constitutes a past tense leading verb. It's a little bit perhaps more involved than it might seem on the face of it. There's not necessarily a neat formula for it. But of course in context, it's usually very clear whether you're dealing with a present tense or a past tense. Now, how do these sequence of tenses affect the translation? Well, you remember in the previous chapter, I asked you to distinguish when you were translating literally between the present subjunctive and the imperfect subjunctive. But you'll remember in the previous chapter, too, that when you were translating into good English, they were the same. Quintus went to Delphi to see the shrine of Apollo, or Quintus is going to Delphi to see the shrine of Apollo. They came out the same. Well, now with indirect commands, since I'm asking you to go directly to good English, your translation will be the same, like it was with your Good English translations before, in both the primary sequence and the secondary sequence. That is, with a present tense main verb followed by a perfect subjunctive, or a past tense main verb followed by an imperfect subjunctive. Both will be translated as to through X. So look toward the middle of the page. You'll see pater filium rogat. The father is asking the son, utse adiuve, to help him. The father is asking the son to help him. Now, if I put that main verb in a past tense, such as the perfect, here, the perfect is a little bit more involved, but here it's meant to be past tense. Then, since it's now in a historical sequence, in a secondary sequence, it's going to be followed by an imperfect subjunctive, pater filium rogavit utse adiuvaret. Just like we would expect, we have a past tense here, the perfect is secondary sequence. We have a past tense main verb, and we have an imperfect subjunctive. But listen to the translation. The father asked the son to help him. So in either case, the translation is the same. The sequence of tense is what we expect. Primary main verb, present subjunctive, secondary main verb, imperfect subjunctive. Pretty darn simple. In either case, we translate into natural English. Okay, easy peasy.